Hello all. I said that I would do a separate review of the 2004 reboot of Battlestar Galactica, which is really basically a separate series. It's not really a reboot, although they retain some of the names and place names. It's really a completely different series. It was written and conceived by Ronald D, who I knew from his work on various Star Trek series, including Star Trek The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, and David Icke, who's a producer. And it first started as a three-episode miniseries in 2003. Then it was greenlit for a full series in 2004, and it ran from 2004 to 2009. There were a couple of spin-offs as well. There was Battlestar Galactica Razor, which told the story of Admiral Kane, who is now played by a woman, and Battlestar Galactica Blood and Chrome, which tells the story of a young William Adama and how he became eventually a Viper pilot, and his early backstory. And then there is a prequel called Caprica, which talks briefly about the origins of the first Cylon War and how the Cylons first came into creation, and also some themes about terrorism, which come up later in Battlestar Galactica, which I thought was an interesting theme. I thought I thought it was pretty good. Unfortunately, I think it was canceled after only a couple of episodes. The ratings were not good. As with the original, the characters are basically the same. I like one thing that they did in upgrading the show, or updating the show. Instead of names like Apollo and Starbuck and Boomer being the people's actual names, they were call signs. They were the call signs of their fighters. So Kara Thrace, who's now a woman, plays Starbuck. Starbuck is the name not of her, but her call sign. Again, Apollo's real name is Lee Adama. He's Lee Adama. His call sign on his Viper is Apollo. Sharon Valeri's call sign is Boomer. Switching some of these roles from male to female, I thought was going to make the show not as good, and actually it does not really have any impact whatsoever. When I saw, that they were going to change Starbuck to a female, I thought, well, how are they going to do that? Starbuck was this, macho, swaggering, womanizer, and, smoked cigars and cursed and drank. Well, Katie Sackhoff plays Starbuck exactly the same. The first thing we see is she's being thrown in the jail because she punched a superior officer in the face. And she still smokes cigars and drinks and curses. I thought, yeah, that's Starbuck. I don't care if it's a woman. That's still Starbuck. And you will too after you see the series. Jamie Bamber as Apollo was really good. Captain Adama, the Commander Adama, I should say, is played now by Edward James Olmos, who's a wonderful actor and really brought a lot of depth to the role. His second in command is now played by Michael Hogan, who is still Colonel Ty. He's now called Saul Ty. They never told you his first name in the original series. He was just Colonel. He was like Colonel Ty. And he's white now, which I thought was kind of interesting. They switched that. And some of the other people, it stars Tricia Helfer as a Cylon agent, simply known as Number 6, and James Callis as Baltar, is now known as Gaius Baltar, who is not quite as black and white a traitor as he was in the original. In this new, and Mary McDonnell as Laura Roslin, who's the colonial president after the colonies are attacked. The story is basically the same. The 12 colonies of Kobol are attacked by the Cylons on the celebration of the 1,000 Years of Peace. But this time, there's a difference. The Cylons are not aliens. They were built by humans as servants. And as in many stories about servants and robots and humans, they turned on their masters. They gained intelligence and self-awareness and decided that they didn't want to be servants anymore, and they attacked the colonies. Devastated everything pretty much, except, of course, the Battlestar Galactica and some ships that were out in space at the time of the attack. And it's the same thing. They're fleeing the Cylons. They have to try to find this mythical 13th colony of Kobol known as Earth. And they go through various trials and travails. The difference now is that there are also now humanoid Cylons who are so authentically convincing that some of them don't know that they're Cylons. And that's kind of an interesting twist on that were put on the original story, that now they're evolved. The idea that never knew who was a Cylon. It was very freaky and very kind of added a lot of tension, I thought, to the show. There are supposedly 8 humanoid Cylon models, and we don't know who they are until later in the series. It turns out that Boomer, Sharon Valerii, is one, and she shoots Adama at the end of the first season, and she doesn't even know it. She doesn't know why. Another one sets off an explosive, commits a terrorist act, and again, that person didn't know they were a Cylon. And this kind of builds throughout the series. There's kind of a interesting theme of death and resurrection. The Cylons have something called the resurrection ship, where they can recreate these 8 different models. And there's also, of course, there's an episode with Admiral Kane, but now she is played by a woman. She's played by the very beautiful Michelle Forbes, who most of you will know as Ensign Ro from Star Trek The Next Generation. And again, recurs in the role as Admiral Ro now in Picard Season 3, which I thought she was really terrific in. Again, she brings a lot of depth to the character. Her backstory, as I said, is told in Battlestar Galactica Razor, which was a little mini-series about what happened to her and how she was living on Toron and the Cylons attacked. There are, like I said, there are 2 different types. There are the Cylon Centurions, who are the ones we saw basically in the original series, though, of course, they updated them with CGI, made them look a little better. They refer to them as toasters, quote unquote. They don't have as much independence. And then there are the humanoid Cylons, who are very, very similar to humans, and there's almost no way to distinguish them. You don't know if somebody's a Cylon unless they tell you or it's revealed. I thought that was interesting. They also, as I said, they changed the backstory that the Cylons were not aliens. They were created by humans, and they turned on them in the end. They do, in fact, like I said, they meet Admiral Kane, and the difference is that she is Commander Adama's superior. She's an admiral, and he's only a commander. So he has to take her orders now, and she's kind of a martinet. She's like really vicious. She doesn't mind torturing Cylons, and all this is because of what happened to her as a kid when her sister was killed by the Cylons in the original Cylon War, and she was tortured, I think, also. So she becomes kind of a ruthless person, and Adama doesn't agree with some of her orders, and eventually, ironically, she's killed by her own lover, which I thought was kind of a twist. I found it interesting that Moore included a gay character because he was notoriously anti-gay in some of the things he did on Star Trek The Next Generation. He refused to let them bring on a gay character because he's quote-unquote Christian. I put that in quotes because I think people who act that way aren't truly Christians. Christians love everybody. They don't care who they are. But at least that's my take. Again, very interesting, very dark take on the series. It's a much more mature, much more in-depth. There's a relationship between Adama and President Roslin, who was later revealed to have cancer. So that's kind of a tragic story. Again, as with the original, there are divisions within the fleet. There's a great, there's kind of a terrorist character called Tom Skerritt, who is played by Richard Hatch, which I thought was a great way to get one of the old characters back into the series. He, I believe, is the only, I think Dirk Benedict made an appearance as well, but he wasn't a major character. But this character that Hatch plays is a major character. He's kind of a terrorist who, again, he just wants to kill the Cylons at all costs. He doesn't care who gets in his way, who gets killed while he's doing this, even if it's humans. There's an interesting theme of cyclical time, which plays throughout the series and plays out into the finale, which I won't spoil for anybody who hasn't seen it, but kind of gives the idea that maybe all these things have happened in the past and they'll happen again in the future. The remaining humans and Cylons try to break this pattern by flying the entire fleet, including Galactica, into the sun so that they can't repeat the cycle, but ... a single Cylon-based star survives. So is it all going to happen again? We don't really know. I thought it was very well done. The CGI special effects are terrific. The new Vipers, which are called the Viper Mark II, are really great. There's a great story about Katie Sackhoff. There wasn't a lot of quote-unquote technobabble in the series, but there had to be a certain amount simply because that's the way it was constructed. They still use the Dratus, but it's updated now. And Katie Sackhoff had to sit in her Viper for something like 16 hours. It was so small they had to like push her into her seat, and she was cramped in like this. She's wearing this really hot spacesuit and the helmet, couldn't move, couldn't pee, and had her memorize this line of technobabble about the ship's engines. And she said the only reason she memorized it was she was so uncomfortable. And I feel very, very bad for Katie Sackhoff having to do that. She did a terrific job, I thought, as Starbuck. When I think of Starbuck now, I think of her, not Dirk Benedict. I also thought Tricia Helfer did a really good job. She's a really slinky, seductress type, and really obviously had a lot of fun in the role. James Callis is wonderful as a much more layered Baltar, who is not just a black and white villain. He has bad and good in him, and yes, he's self-motivated, but he's more of an anti-hero than a villain, but he's very interesting. There is no Imperious leader again because, you know, the Cylons are now not alien. Very good take, very interesting, and I highly recommend it. If you haven't seen it, it is in fact available on both DVD and Blu-ray.